Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to the home of the round 13 winners, North Melbourne defeating the West Coast Eagles at Hands Oval in Bunbury by 10 points this evening in what was an extremely ugly and potentially undeserving victory for North Melbourne. I guess we'll take just about anything we can get at this stage. North Melbourne 9-8-62 to West Coast 6-16. 52. It was definitely not a game for the ages. That's for sure. It was a strange one, and there's so much to unpack from the game this evening. And I guess I just wanted to sort of start with my initial thoughts on the game. Sitting here now, we finished up a few hours ago. I'm recording this on Sunday night. We are so deprived of success and of victories at North Melbourne over the past few seasons. None of you will be shocked by that. I mean, we've all lived the roller coaster that is supporting North Melbourne our whole lives, but in particular, it's been quite difficult the past few seasons. And I sat in my parents' home watching the game with my dad, and at 3/4 time, I said to him, and I posted on Twitter, this club has got one quarter to prove to me that there was going to be no worse performance than Good Friday this season, because that is kind of the direction it was heading for me. I thought we weren't going to see anything worse than Good Friday this year. I didn't think it was possible to top that, and we were 30 minutes away from proving me and majority of the fan base wrong. And we dug deep, and we found a way to win the game. And there are a lot of North fans who will be feeling deflated after the performance, after the result. And I completely understand that. And I guess what you take away from this evening's game, I think, is largely based on what you value, I think, in terms of progression and in terms of what to you individually is a measurement of success. I've come on this channel so much in the first half of this season and have acknowledged the improvements and acknowledged the competitiveness and have acknowledged our improvement in games and to hang in there and to really challenge it with some of the best sides in the competition. But I have been very firm on the stance that tangible improvement is what is going to prove to me that this club is on an upwards trajectory. And close losses to Port or Essendon, a draw against Brisbane, just isn't going to do it for me. Winning games of football for a club that has been unable to win games of football for so many years now, and learning how to secure the 4 points in just about any situation and any circumstance is what's going to prove to me that we are on the upwards trajectory. And as difficult as majority of today's game was to watch, that fourth quarter showed to me that maybe things are starting to fall into place, because there was no way in hell we should have won that game today. West Coast in the first quarter dominated everywhere but on the scoreboard. But for us to be in a position, we were at our most, I think we were 3 goals down at stages in the last quarter. And for us to claw back, we scored 4 goals to 1 goal in the final quarter. And to kind of just grind out that last quarter, and for certain players to step up when needed. Harry Sheezel, we'll talk about his fourth quarter later. McKercher, Finn O'Sullivan, Jai Simpkin with the sealer, Cam Zurha holding his nerve time and time again in that fourth quarter. That's character building, and that is shifting the mindset from not losing games to figuring out how to win them. Because we, as a collective, I think, went into this game thinking it's a game we should win, and it's a game we should win fairly comfortably. But if the Richmond game was anything to go by a few weeks ago, it's that when we're in vulnerable positions, that's when we struggle the most. I mean, we got out to, a 5-goal lead against Richmond at the G just a few weeks ago and fell over the line in that performance. Here we were at Hands Oval at 3/4 time, 10 points down to a side that we are comfortably better than, I would say. So for us to find a way to stand up and respond when challenged in game and to actually finish the game winners, that means way more to me than the close, gallant effort and losses we put in earlier on in the season. And for me, that's what's going to be most important, because it's not just about the result today. It's what the result today does and what we can build on from here. It's the confidence that will start to grow, and it's the self-belief, and particularly these young guys. I mean, Colby McKercher's had a really ordinary first half of the season, and his performance today was just about best on ground, I would say. He was unbelievable. Finn O'Sullivan, best game he's played for North Melbourne. He was huge in that last quarter. Players like this, when they start to learn how to win games of footy, they're going to start thinking they're unstoppable, and that's going to feed into the rest of this football club. It's going to feed into the mindset. It's going to feed into the confidence, and it's going to allow us to build. So now what we look like heading into the game against Fremantle and our mentality approaching the Dockers and then against Carlton and then against Hawthorn is completely different to what would have happened if we weren't able to win the game today. And I think it's got to be this flow-on effect. Obviously now the onus is on us to actually take all those bits and pieces and run with it and hopefully build a few more wins. But at this point in the season and a game like this, you just find a way to win, because it's the only way we can build, and it's the only way we can actually move forward is by winning games like this. The best sides in the competition that win 15, 16, 17, 18 games for the season will have ugly wins just like this one. And all of those things matter when you are searching towards finals and searching towards September. We might not be in that position now, but we've got to find a way to win the ugly close ones. We've got to find a way to run over the top of the likes of a D's when the opportunity is at hand. We've got to find a way to fall over the line against Richmond. We have to learn all of these things because for so long we've been without any of it. And I don't think the significance of this result can be undersold. Am I satisfied? It's debatable. There's obviously big elements of that game that I hated, and there are elements of that game that really concerned me. But we've still won the game. The way the game played out and the way we able to just harness everything in that last quarter and take the opportunity in that last quarter was absolutely the most pleasing thing for me as a North supporter sitting here at the end of the game today. The other thing I noticed in the game today is how much of North Melbourne I saw in West Coast. It was quite, I don't know, it was a really weird, almost sliding doors moment. I hope it's a sliding doors moment for this team, because for so often in the first half of this season, we have been dominant in play. We've really dominated the possession. We've dominated the flow of the game, and we've seemed to be the ones to really take control, but we've failed to capitalise on the scoreboard. And that was exactly the case for West Coast today. They did have a patch late in the second and in the third quarter where they were starting to get on top and they were starting to kick straight, much the same way we've been able to do in games this season. But in the last quarter, they really looked to just run out of steam, and it kind of seemed like they did everything they could in those first three quarters to get on top, couldn't quite reflect it on the scoreboard, were very inaccurate in front of goal. And it was North who were able to just mature and hold on and step up in the moment when demanded. And I find that quite intriguing, and I wonder if that is a sliding doors moment for this football club now, and the way, like I said, the rest of this season now plays out. A lot of what West Coast showed on field today was a really gallant, heart-filled performance that wasn't enough to get the job done. A gallant effort, an honourable loss, if you like. How many of those have we been involved in, and how many of the West Coast-like performances have we put in the first half of the season, and you still get nothing for it? So potentially some might look at it as an empty victory, but having been in the position that West Coast were in today multiple times this season, I look at what we were able to do in such a short amount of time, and it really makes you wonder what we're able to do if we can actually string more of our best football together as the weeks go on. And like I've said all throughout this week, and even during the bye week, the mentality now needs to shift. We now need to move from not losing games to winning games. If we're going into games that we should win, we've got to find a way to win them rather than finding ourselves on the back foot and then working our way back into games. We were in front for majority of this game. It was West Coast when they started kicking accurately, they started to hit the lead, and then we were able to get the game back on our terms. But like I said, so many times this script has been flipped, and I've seen it all before because West Coast performance was very similar to so many performances that North had put in so far this season. So I really hope that this isn't just a one-off and we're not just sitting here and thinking, okay, well, we're never going to be able to replicate that again. I think now we need to use this as a launch pad for the second half of our season and find more ways to win games instead of preventing us from losing. I mentioned Harry Sheezel's fourth quarter at the top of this video, and I think that's where I want to start. 12 touches in the final term for Harry, 3 tackles, 3 contested possessions are behind, unfortunately, but he really did lead the charge in the last quarter. And for Harry, he's had such an up and down season. I think we've been trying to use his skill, and we know what a skillful and talented player he is, and we know how adaptable he is, but I think we've been trying to use that to fill so many holes in the side throughout this season. He's been floated between 3 or 4 positions around the ground in the opening half of the season, but we know, and Todd Viney did say this during the week, that he would probably settle in a mid to forward role in the second half of the year, and boy, wasn't he amazing. So many of our key midfielders were pretty quiet for majority of the game, but the best players do find a way to bring themselves back into the game. And Harry Sheezel was definitely that in the last quarter, as was Jai Simpkin. I think Jai's definitely had his struggles off field this season, but the way he was able to step up in that last quarter, he kicked a behind on the run and then he kicked the match winning goal. I think it was just symbolic. I think it had to be Jai. He was the guy this time last year in our first win of 2024 against West Coast over in Perth. He put in one of the best performances, if not the best performance of his career. So while again he too was a little bit quiet for majority of the game, to see him step up in that last quarter and to kick the sealer, I think you've just got to take your chances when you can. And there were a lot of good players that went missing today, and there have been a lot of good players that have been missing at various stages of this season. But when the opportunity is there for the taking, it says something about you and about your leadership ability if you can rise to the occasion. And I don't want to use Zach Fisher as an example of someone who didn't do this, because I didn't mind the game we had from Fish today, and I thought he really was quite dynamic and quite lively in that more attacking role. But unfortunately for Fisher, he had 4 scoring shots, 3 behinds and 1 just out on the full. And that's sort of the difference between a player like Fish and then a player like Jai. Jai took his moment when he had it, and Fish unfortunately tried to, and he almost was the hero in the last quarter but didn't quite have the polish to finish it off. One player who really did step up and show us all exactly what he's made of was Colby McKercher. Colby McKercher has had a really hit and miss start to season 2025. He has kind of looked better as the season has gone on. He was particularly impressive against Richmond and again against Collingwood, seemed to have really refound his best form, but today he absolutely took us back 12 months and wound back the clock. He was absolutely unreal today. 35 touches, 613 metres gained, 4 inside 50s, 5 clearances, a tackle and a goal assist, if you don't mind. He was accompanied by Finn O'Sullivan, who undoubtedly put in his best performance as a Roo so far in season 2025. 17 touches at 76% disposal efficiency, 443 metres gained, 2 inside 50s, 3 tackles, and a really, really nice goal that got us started in the last quarter. The one thing I will say about Finn O'Sullivan's goal is I understand it came at a time where the game was still in the balance, and maybe the game might have felt a little bit out of reach at that time, but I felt like for a kid with his first goal in AFL footy, we probably should have got around him and celebrated him a little bit more than we did as a side. That was a little bit disappointing, I think, is probably the one thing I will say, but I loved what Finn O'Sullivan brought to the table, and we know that he is going to be such an unbelievable player for us, but the way he, in what was his 10th game of AFL football, the way he stood up and really just led led with maturity and a really smart decision maker. He's exactly the kind of player that's going to allow us to succeed in the future. He is just such an incredible user of the footy. He makes such good decisions, and I just loved what we saw from Foss. I've loved what we've seen from him so far this season, but this really was a standout performance for mine. I also loved the game from Paul Curtis and from Cam Zurhaar. Both of these guys in season 2025 have gone to a new level. Paul Curtis was the one starting us off at the beginning of the game and was absolutely the live wire for North Melbourne in the first half, and then Cam Zurhaar in the last, holding his nerve, taking some fantastic contested marks and hitting the scoreboard absolutely when we needed. The way he celebrated his goal when he put North back in front in the fourth quarter, it was energetic and it was emotional. And I just really, the way he fired up, I've always questioned Cam, and he's super nonchalant, and I understand there's probably still a little bit of question marks around him from some fans. I've seen people write in the comments they're still questioning him and what he's bringing to the table, but for me, he is stepping up week in, week out, and I think this is what we've wanted from Cam Zurhaar, is a little bit of consistency in his game, because look what he's capable of doing. He's not going to be the showstopper every single week, and that is okay when you've got the likes of a Paul Curtis stepping up. And Jack Darling, I thought, was really, really good pushing up the ground today. He couldn't hit the scoreboard, but I thought he supported those guys really, really well. I thought Jacob Constanti on the wing in the opening quarter was sensational. He was throwing himself at everything. I thought Tristan Xerri was absolutely unbelievable once again today. He was just running amok in the middle of the ground. His clearance work and his tackling is absolutely phenomenal. I have not seen a big man dominate like he does for quite some time, and I do think he is putting his best foot forward when it comes to All-Australian. I think he deserves it. These things might not necessarily mean so much to other teams or other individuals, but for North, I think we often feel like our players are neglected, and I know Tristan Xerri does get the praise and the applaud from, the external AFL world, but what he did again today, I think he was keeping us in the game for majority of the time when we were kind of just hanging on by a thread, and then he demanded others to step up in his presence. There was so much to like from this North Melbourne side today. You just have to kind of look and dig a little bit deeper and pull out what you can and pull out the things that will keep us in good stead week in, week out, and I think a few of those examples do just that. I have avoided addressing the elephant in the room for a little while now, because I did think that Nick Larkey's first half of season 2025 was pretty sensational. He and Paul Curtis combined in the first 7 rounds of the season for 36 goals, 18 apiece. It was almost like the moment Paul Curtis left the side due to suspension, so too did Nick Larkey's form. And while I did appreciate his efforts to push up the ground and to offer a presenting target higher up the ground, he once again failed to impact the scoreboard, and Harry Edwards was without a doubt West Coast best player today. He completely shoved Nick Larkey out of this game. He could get nowhere near it, sort of when it came to facing the big sticks. He was goalless today, and he just wasn't able to get into the game anywhere inside the forward 50. His only impact on the game was pushing up the ground, like I said, and offering a marking target higher up the ground. It is quite concerning, because for so long we have relied on him to be the guy, and it kind of, I don't know what's going on with him, especially in the off season. We've actually gone out of our way to find him support, and Jack Darling has been a great support for that forward line. If Jack Darling's not chipping in with 1 or 2 goals here or there, he's able to put body work on his opponent to give space to the likes of a Zurhaar or a Paul Curtis. There's an even spread amongst matchups in the forward line. Our forward line is functioning the best it has for quite some time, and I understand that Paul Curtis and Cam Zurhaar are able to benefit from the likes of Jack Darling, but I can't understand why it's not clicking for Nick Larkey. Jack Darling did speak to the media earlier this year ahead of his 300th game, and he said the synergy between he and Larkey has been so smooth and so seamless, because it's like the same way he played with JK for so many years. Larkey does remind him of JK, so he knows how to work to his strengths, and he knows how to bring the best out of him. So I can't understand what's going on with Nick Larkey. Maybe part of it is our disposal inside the forward 50, and that was my one concern with Finbar going out of this side. Finbar is the best contested overhead mark we have amongst our tall forwards who have rotated through the forward line this season, which is why when we would lob the ball inside forward 50, he was actually giving us an opportunity to mark things contestedly down there. Not to say the others aren't capable of it. We did see some great contested marks throughout this game, but that element in particular was something that Finbar could really help. Larky isn't a super strong overhead contested mark. We maybe need to find a way to work better for him and kick to his advantage. On the lead, chest out, that's where Nick Larky is at his very best. It's concerning. I don't think dropping him is the answer. I think for some people, some players, in terms of structure and in terms of their own confidence, maybe the best way to allow them to refine their best form is to just give them time to do it in the senior side. We do have a lot of contributors across the board at the moment that it is frustrating, but it isn't hindering us so badly at the moment. We are still finding avenues to goal, but it is something I'd be keeping our eye on. I don't think that dropping him to the VFL is a realistic option, but is that naive of me? I mean, we've seen so many key senior players be dropped throughout this season. Bailey Scott, Aidan Corr, Griffin Logue, just to name a few. Maybe it is something that we do need to look at. I almost feel guilty suggesting that, to be honest, but I feel like it's something that kind of plays in your mind because this has been going on for half of the season so far now. And I think that's really why I had avoided addressing it up until this point, is because his first 6 to 7 games were very, very strong and his numbers were excellent, but he's kind of gone missing in action since then. As the trajectory and the form of the side has improved, he's kind of been pushed to the side. So now I'd say half of his season has been as good as it has been bad. So we really need to address and assess the situation and figure out where we go from here. I personally don't think that dropping him is the answer, but I don't know. Is there somebody else that can come in? Is something else we can do? I'm not too sure. I also don't know how I feel about the forward structure at the moment as a whole. When we were going with a 2-prong forward line earlier in the season, our scoring was higher and it was more improved. It was only when we moved to a 3-prong forward line that defensively, going the other way, we were able to stop the opposition from scoring. West Coast kicked themselves out of this game today, and I just sort of thought going back to a 2-prong forward line today, potentially we thought the defensive pressure and defensive framework higher up the ground was strong enough that we could potentially look to inject a little bit more pace and a little bit more lively electric options moving forward to the ball. But Hansen Jr. failed to have an impact in the second half when he came on for Charlie Comben, and that's another thing we're going to have to wait and see. Will Chom be okay and be able to front up in 6 days' time against Fremantle? I guess he's in a little bit of a race against the clock. Callan Dawson is the only key defender who is over in WA, if he even is over in WA at the moment. He'd probably be the likely replacement for Charlie Comben should he not pull up in time ahead of the game against Fremantle. And what do you do with Hansen Jr.? I mean, I don't think he really impacted the game at all. I thought Zach Fisher, like I said earlier, he was okay, but his execution probably does need a little bit of work. That's always been a problem for Fish, but is this where we start to flirt with the likes of a Cooper Harvey, or do we maybe look to the likes of a Bryn Teakle, and then is Zach Fisher relegated to the sub once again? Do we potentially look at a Zach Banch who had 3 goals in the VFL for North on Saturday? Do we look at Will Phillips? He looks like he is doing everything he can and more to break into this side. So there are maybe a few magnets that do need to be shuffled. I don't know how many, if any, players will fly over to Perth this week. I kind of went into this fortnight thinking the only players that will play are the ones who are over there at the moment, and then the rest who are behind, they'll just have to wait their turn against Carlton as their first sort of opportunity to move and break into this side when we return from this 2-week stint in Perth. But I could be wrong. I think there is so much that's going to play out now ahead of this game against Fremantle. We have 6 days. Our next game is at Optus Stadium on Saturday night. It is now turning into a very intriguing clash. Frio's best has challenged the best best in the competition, and their worst has been absolutely woeful. So how we go, where we catch them, only way to find out is to tune in on Saturday night. But until then, I personally am going to revel in the success and the win for a few more days. How are you guys feeling after today's win against West Coast over in Bunbury? Leave all of your thoughts in the comments below. I'm sure there'll be a lot of divided opinions. It was definitely a big talking point this game, but I know personally that there's no better feeling in football than winning, and that is exactly what we did today. I look forward to dissecting this one a little bit more with you guys over the week and previewing all of the action for our second game over in WA. Like I said, we take on Fremantle next Saturday night. I will see you all very soon. Have a fantastic rest of your long weekend for those of you who are enjoying a long weekend today, and I will see you very shortly. Go Roos.